right, welcome to another episode of Streaming Clouds. As always, thank you for tuning in. My name is Robin. I'm a CSA at NordCloud and an Azure MVP. Usually forget our intros, so that's why we do it this time. Kev, what are we up to today, man?
So yeah, quick introduction from myself. I think most people know who I am, right? But I'm Kevin Evans. I'm a CSA, Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft as well. And today we have Gordon Byers. Gordon, you're a CSA, right? I mean,
yeah, I'm a CSA.
Right? But yeah, you are a CSA. Yeah. Still a CSA, but he's getting there, right? So yeah, I just a quick introduction, right? I'll give you my brief synopsis on this, but I met Gordon about a year ago, right, when I started off in Microsoft UK, and he gave a technical demonstration on what was known as the AKS bicep landing zone accelerator, right? And it was a thing of marvel. It really was, because I'm not going to steal Gordon's thunder, but yeah, it was a great place to start, right? If you're looking at AKS, so the Azure Kubernetes Service, right? So we'll get onto that in a few seconds. But yeah, again, if you like what we're doing, don't forget to like and subscribe, and always don't forget to join the community on Discord as well. I think Robin's gonna do the magic.
You're too fast because I can only put one. Like this one's finished, and then we can.
There we go.
Yeah. Boom. Community is growing, by the way. We passed 150 members last week. Engagement is going up as well. So yeah, we added a. What did we do? We added a channel. What was it? Scripting.
Scripting, right? So the Kubernetes channel on there seems to be like seems to have the most engagement, right? So if you're into Kubernetes, then come and join the community. There's folks from all across the industry in there. So, and like Robin said, it's growing. Cool. So without any further ado, I'll introduce Gordon. Gordon, do you just want to give yourself a quick intro and what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. So I'm Gordon Byers. I am a cloud solution architect working for Microsoft here in the UK. I've been doing this role for, I think it's about 7 years last week. So quite a long time. Fortunate from that time to have spent some time in Microsoft engineering on rotation as well. So kind of seen how the sausage gets made and made some really good contacts and experiences during that time. So yeah.
Awesome.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, sorry, Rob.
So, Gordon, shall we share your screen?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I'm going to kind of warn you, we're going to probably take a bit of a meandering journey as we talk about like AKS and any accelerators and reference architectures and everything around it, because it's a bountiful landscape, let's put it that way. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey and we'll see how we go.
All right, buckle up. All right, so let's get started.
So I'm going to start this off where you should always start, which is the Microsoft documentation. So we got lots of stuff to do with AKS on the Microsoft docs, as you'd expect. A really good section part of this, especially for kind of like enterprise customers, is the kind of the cloud adoption framework, landing zone accelerator. That's where like there's so much good material here. So I'm going to start off our journey just kind of looking down through this page, and I'm going to jump into one of the diagrams, which I think always sets the context of a big part of the problem is that we're trying to solve. So this diagram on screen, I'm sure I've seen one of your previous sessions, like probably a few months ago. You did a whole piece on Azure landing zones.
It's a topic that we constantly are visiting, right? Because it's always growing. Yeah, but yeah, Azure landing zones, or formerly known as enterprise scale, right? So yeah.
So I'm definitely not going to take up much time talking about that, since you guys already covered that. I'm going to summarize it in one kind of word, which is just that of governance. It's putting in lots of good practices. And where the landing zone for AKS and there's other landing zones as well, focusing on different tech stacks. where they've really focused in on is that kind of workload perspective. You kind of got all your governance there, you got all your different subscriptions set up, but now you actually want to get on and do something real, something that fits in with what you've already implemented. So this is kind of where you kind of start off when you're kind of having those landing zone conversations. So I'm going to quickly jump to one of the first links, which goes to one of the GitHub repos. And again, I did kind of mention we're on a bit of a meandering journey with this. So we come here, and if you haven't seen this repo already, it's a really good collection of specific resources and scenarios. So again, the focus is absolutely what we see on screen at the moment. But it's got lots of different scenarios in there. So it's not just about, like, let's deploy a cluster, let's do this. There's some really good content in there about backup. So if you're going into running stateful workloads, you want to back them up, there's some great scenario stuff in there. The folks are just about to publish some content on Windows containers. So again, there's loads of scenario stuff in there around Windows containers. And that's coming through. So it's kind of almost that kind of collection of different pieces. And the one that, I mean, Kevin was funny to begin with when he was calling it the Bicep Accelerator. It is true Microsoft in the fact that we're just having like name changes or name tweaks and everything else. So the kind of repository that I'm kind of contributing to is, we're trying to consistently refer to it as AKS construction. That's kind of where we're at the moment. That we've tried to drop some of the Bicep branding around that. And if we jump over again to another repository, we've kind of got all this landing inside of AKS construction. So this, at this point, is quite a mature project. We've kind of been running it for like about 2 years, it feels like. And this whole thing started, well, it's started 2 years ago, but it all started with a guy called Keith Howling, who's very much still involved with this project. And I mentioned about the engineering rotations in my introduction. Keith was actually doing his rotation with the AKS team itself. So he was a product manager in the team, working with some of like the most challenging AKS customers that we have, kind of working on different feature ideas that were floating around in the team. And one of the things that they were doing were trying to make things simpler, trying to figure out, when people are getting started with AKS, what stuff do they need to know about? How can we take them through that journey and actually like do that from the simplest use cases where people just want to put a sandbox cluster together, or the really complex extreme use cases as well. So this is where the web app was born, was out of these kind of discussions that Keith was having as part of that, part of being the AKS in the AKS engineering team. So this page I'm landing on now, this will be the one that Kevin's probably most familiar with. And this is the web app experience that we have for construction. And this is what really drives the sort of environment you want to create. So again, we can start off with this kind of real simple, we just want to get familiar with something, we want to get something deployed and we want to play with it. So we kind of choose these two presets at the top, and then we skim down to the page. And then we get a bunch of other tabs we can start exploring and fine tuning. So the whole purpose around this is just to tailor the experience and not overwhelm and overload the user with what's going on. I'm going to pause for you guys to jump in. Come on.
So where is this running again, this web app?
So where's it running? We're running it out of GitHub Pages. So we were kind of faced with, where do we host this and what's this thing built on? So it's a React application, which is, once it's built, it's all there. It's just a big static site. So we didn't need any complex hosting for it. So we just leaned on GitHub Pages for running this.
Okay, and you built this, you fork or clone the repo, and you built this for yourself then? Or is this something that's already out there?
So this comes from one of the main React scaffolds, one of the main React web scaffolds. So Keith took this, he's a big front-end guy, and then customized this from there. So it's all kind of pretty much standards-based. It's all JavaScript. We are using the Microsoft Fluent UI controls for when we're kind of doing stuff on the cluster. You can start grabbing sliders, increasing your node count and stuff. But it's all built up from a standard React app.
All right. What I'm trying to get at is this available already? You can go to a page and then you can use this and
public. Yeah.
Okay, and what does it generate then? The bicep code for you to deploy, or?
Cool question. So what it does is there is bicep behind the scenes. So if I kind of skipped back to the repository itself, let's have a little explore here. We got a folder, we got some bicep code. We got actually quite a lot of bicep code in here, to be honest. And it is super highly conditional. Like if you think when you're kind of writing Terraform or bicep code, you'll be taking in some parameter input. But every parameter that you take in can vary the behavior of what gets called. So you see down here, we've got a firewall module. So we're installing Azure Firewall. We're putting in user-defined routes that are directing all the traffic to leave via the firewall. We're doing all the config in bicep. But back here, if you want a simple cluster, you're not going to end up with a firewall. It's all being conditionally called based on the decisions. So the point of the web app is to provide a bunch of parameters to the bicep. And that's how we can get away with having a single maintainable set of bicep files, and we have a web front end that lets the user tailor their input.
Got it. So it will help you make the right decisions, and it will tell you how to deploy it, pointing to a existing repository with conditional modular bicep code that will deploy it for you. Right? That's at least you need to deploy it, but it will be there for you to deploy.
Exactly. So when we have customers that consume this for the first time, they pretty much just run this. And this is just calling out to our repo in the releases. So what we do is we cut releases usually every 2 weeks as we get features put in. That points directly to that. Some of the more mature customers that use this, they'll clone it, they'll make it their own, they'll tweak some of the templates a little bit maybe, and they'll just put that into their infrastructure as code library.
Impressive.
So we have in the backlog talking about the whole graduation path of using this, because I mean it's nice to generate this, but as an organization, you got to be always super careful about where you take dependencies. So my background, software engineering, recently I was kind of doing talks talking about Dapper and container apps and everything. And I think you've got to always be mindful about what you take a dependency on. But this is the great thing about like open source and even open source infrastructure as code. You can take it, you can grab it, make it your own, and then as the project develops, you might choose to update your fork, or you might just want to see what the difference is, but you've kind of taken that as a jump start for yourself.
Nice. I have a good question from
go on.
a good friend, Mr. Pixel Robots. So you would love to see some cost estimates with each option. So it's more like a suggestion. It's not even a question.
That's a really good call. I think there was one of the, how Microsoft run their hackathon week every year. I'm sure there was one of the projects in there had a really good project around almost giving an ARM template and parameters to it, and it would come back with the cost. It was blending the commercially priced services with whatever you're deploying. It would do that. So actually, that's a great idea. It wouldn't take much for us to incorporate that. As I'm at the bottom of the screen, I'm just going to kind of jump into this next section because I'm really happy with some of the stuff that got put in here probably 3 or 4 months ago, which is it's not just deploying it through CLI in the terminal. we've kind of got GitHub reusable workflows in here now. So we're hosting these in our repository. So if you're quite familiar with GitHub and its whole kind of workflow action model, and you just want to just wire this straight into your process, you can just grab this, shove it into GitHub, and you can be deploying clusters in CI/CD instead of just running kind of script commands on your local terminal.
That's going to help. You're talking about the journey, right? Of folks coming to use this tool, right? I came here straight away to see what a good AKS instance look like, right? And I'm sure that's what you're going to refer to later on, but reference architecture, but also folks that maybe have an existing infrastructure as a code factory internally, right? That they've got with their operations guys or girls, basically. But you can come in here, grab this, and start inputting it to GitHub as well, right? So it's there to get you started, somewhere to start, right? Or if you're a mature customer, somewhere where you can come in, take what you need, modify it for your requirements.
Yeah, totally. I think and one of the reasons I started back in the docs is you kind of get the right steer based on your experience. So if you've never heard of Kubernetes before and you immediately land on this as your first project, that's probably not the right place for you to be. You've still got some learning to do before you just start cranking clusters out and figuring what on earth I need to do with this. It's like, oh, great, I've got a cluster now. And what's this pod thing? And what's this going on? It's like, it's intended for people that, they've been through some of the more basic training that you can do. You might have been through the AKS baseline, but now you actually want to make it your own. It's great to have gone through the learning experience, but now, what do I want for my enterprise? What do I want for my project? And that's where these tabs come in really useful. So we've got some of the Azure specialists, and I think one of the things they really like about this is that they can take this to a customer and actually start having a conversation around each of these individual features, because it spurs the conversation, like straight out of the box. Uptime SLA. A number of the reference implementations, that they hard code this. They go, you're going to have it, or we're not even going to tell you about it. But here, we're kind of making it optional. It's back to this conditional bicep templates that we have for running all the code. So we let you choose. We go back to the docs. You want to read some more about the Uptime SLA? Go click on the link, go read about it. Don't just make ill-informed decisions. We'll give you hints as we go through as best we can, but there is no excuse for not visiting the docs and kind of learning up on some of these hard subjects as well. So kind of as we go through this, I'll probably jump on some of the newer features we've added. I mean, Kevin, you've seen this before. As much as we all want to go, ooh, we can have four cluster, we can have a 4 node, we can have a 100 node, that's only going to keep us entertained for so long. So the way we've seen this project evolve is through features being added to it. So let's jump onto add-ons quickly. So in the last week's release, we added 2 features for premium SKU of ACR. So that is supporting Docker Content Trust and the preview feature they've got of deleting untagged images. So this signal is one of them, the Content Trust, was based off customer signal. We have customers asking for this. So getting examples in here works particularly well. And the other one being like this second option here is preview. But if you go and read about the well-architected framework, this is referenced here as well. So really what we're trying to do with this is to tie together multiple Azure recommendations. So we've got the secure baseline architecture, which this is based on, but we've got the well-architected framework, and we've got the cloud adoption framework, and we've got this framework and this framework. And you don't find many reference implementations that try and work with all of them at the same time. And there's good reason. It's blooming hard work sometimes. So that's one of the things we're trying to do here. We're in effect trying to walk the path that we ask customers to do. We're trying to create a best practice AKS environment, whilst kind of balancing all these frameworks.
No, it's awesome. We've got a lot of frameworks that we have to sort of, we try and advocate, yeah. And it's like you said, it's a very hard path to sort of align. There's always trade-offs or business justification or processes, whereas this is, it's applying those guardrails. So I think it comes back to that, like, the cloud adoption framework, right, where we've deployed our governance again, right, to our larger environment, but how do we do it for AKS, right? And you've got options in here from, there's all different flavors in here, right? You can deploy the basic tier or a standard tier or a premium tier, depending on, if it's going to be dev or a POC environment or production, right? So there's all sorts of, different options.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, let's take a little bit more of a tour through the app, but remind me to come back to that dev production scenario. That's one we've got an issue in the repo about. We're getting some design work done on that at the moment.
Okay.
So I mean, add-ons is probably the longest tab that's in there, because it's Kubernetes. Once you've opened the door, there's a bunch of stuff you can enable. So like the first one's ingress, and if you read the AKS baseline documentation, they don't call out a specific ingress controller solution, and that's on purpose. If you speak to those guys, they don't want to pin their mast to traffic or Nginx. It needs to be, like customer decision. But if we take the baseline as the example, they have 4 different reference implementations, and the main one, the one you'll find on the docs, that does use traffic. So that's great. We could use that one. The one they've got for regulated industries, I think that's the right term that gets used for that.
That's right.
I think that's Nginx or AGIC. That's one of the two. So the whole thing about the baseline is it's not just like one thing, and we need to kind of have that at the front of letting people choose. And the experience you have with, let's say, App Gateway, that might be much more managed. So if we come back up to these templates at the very beginning, we can kind of say our operational principle is we want a managed environment. And that means that automatically all those checkboxes for ingress and stuff get checked. We've got, we'll have App Gateway in here. We'll have a bunch of other ones in here, but it'll always be like the Azure solution. Or if we went back up on, okay, I actually prefer open source, we'll come back down here and we've now got Prometheus going on, and we've got Contour as the ingress. So we're kind of jumping around the presets a little bit based on your stance.
Yeah, it's all these options, right? I'm always
there's too many. There's too many, and this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to guide it a little bit.
Yeah, but even then we have Trafic, we have Nginx, we have AGIC, the application gateway one, which is Richard is not a big fan of that one, at least. I heard him talk about this before, right? So it's slow. He's using a combination of an Nginx controller, I guess, with some private endpoints, if I'm correct, Richard. We had this discussion before because I'm dealing with this now at our customer that I'm working for. We're using Cloudflare as well. So that basically excludes the application gateway long term, but we're still dabbling around like, okay, what's now the best option? Gives us the most performance or the best performance, but still like web application firewall capabilities, right? WASP or WASP top 10, right? Well, not WASP, but all WASP top 10 stuff and, things like that.
And I think certainly where I stand is I would always hate to be prescriptive going into a customer. You want to use the Microsoft thing for everything. It's not about like always. We're not that. I think it's Scott Hanselman. We're not your grandfather's Microsoft. It's doing the best thing for the customer.
I like that.
Nice one. Yeah, prescriptive guidance, basically. Is that the right term?
Well, I think things like landing zones and enterprise scale, they are leaning on that prescriptive guidance. And again, back to like the AKS baseline, we're talking about ingress as a capability. We don't necessarily say use this one; it's the best one. So prescriptive, but meeting the customer where they are as well.
Well, well-informed decisions. That's what you're trying to get people to, right? You already mentioned that at the beginning, which I think is a really good one because, okay, what are the trade-offs, right? So am I going managed and then I have less flexibility, but I also have less operations, basically, right? Or
it's much better to ask someone why did you choose AGIC or why did you choose Nginx? It's better to say that and then have the conversation about it than just saying you should be using this because ill-informed, prescriptive kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And the other one we haven't really kind of touched on much, the one that kind of got snuck in there more recently, is the web app routing, which is kind of a nice way of getting Nginx into your cluster, but having the AKS manage it. So I think as that matures, that's going to be a really nice option for customers as well.
Like the best of both worlds, right? So,
yeah, I think it's going to be quite nice in the fact that it'll put, because I'm trying to remember which version of Kubernetes it was where there was a bit of a breaking change with Nginx. I think it was like 122 maybe, where you would have to kind of upgrade your app and annotations and the controller, and it became lots of customers having lots of friction at that point. So having someone else manage it and upgrade it is great. But the downside is obviously flexibility as well. So if I go for like the Nginx one here, so we're using Helm to actually install this on the cluster, and you then have the option of a bunch of different settings you can give to Helm, such as, well, actually, let's run this on every single node. So running Nginx as a daemon set on every single node, that might be what we want. So we fronted up a couple of the common options we'd want to have on there. But if you go for the managed solution, you don't necessarily have all the same dials to control it, but you get some of the benefits of it being managed.
Yeah, it's always funny when we talk about Kubernetes and we go through all these different options. My brain always starts working and then try to come up with like, oh, okay, does this affect the things that I was working on today or last week or thinking about? And I always come back to the same thing. Like, this is massive, right? It's crazy.
It is a massive infrastructure construct for application developers. My background's like software engineering, and Kubernetes itself is like way more infrastructure than I thought I'd ever get. But it's for apps. It's for apps, but it's kind of like data center in a construct,
Yeah, Kubernetes is a data center in a box. Yeah,
I completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
All right, sorry, we've all been babbling. What is it about Kubernetes? But I think there's lots more to cover, right?
I'm quite happily babbling. I kind of half thought we would just end up just talking this thing for the whole call, but I'll try and get us back on track a little bit, and we can kind of steam through this. And I'd love to actually kind of go back to the repository and show you some of the CI/CD we've got in there as well. Because the other kind of misconception that we have when, like, say, specialists or people will demo this is you think, oh, it's just a web app. It gives me a command, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes as well. So let's kind of take a spin through some of the other features and stuff that we expose. It's kind of worth noting that I mentioned earlier, all this is based from like customer signals and product signals. When there's something in preview, we'll try and get that wrapped in there if it kind of makes sense for the masses. So I suppose as we get down here, we've got Azure policy, which hasn't really changed that much. So we can kind of flip that on. We'll choose we want to have the restricted pod standards instead of the baseline standards, and we can kind of follow these links and see what the difference is. We might want to choose east-west traffic restriction. So we're kind of always, every point kind of going through this, we'll try and give a little nudge of description and capability where we can, just so we're not just becoming a bunch of tick boxes that you want to rattle through. It's steers to the docs, and it's little kind of guidance as we go as well. And when you choose some options, that will stop you choosing other options. So if I want to go with Azure, we get this other little pop-up which talks about creating a default deny in the namespace as well. So we can go off and do that. That seems to be something that security teams love. Let's put a default deny in the namespace. I don't think app developers necessarily think.
and the war continues, right? So
it's one of the, if you know everything about the app, then it's great. Also, don't apply this to the kube system namespace. That's generally going to be a bad thing too. Even like really popular open source packages like external DNS and like Cert Manager, their Helm charts don't come with network policy, so they're kind of expecting there won't be any restrictions where they're operating, or you then have to write your own. So it's kind of like going down the road of that. CSI has been a really interesting one. I've obviously seen that kind of develop a lot recently. I think, and the other one that kind of bumps into this one a little bit is workload identity as well. So this is one which is still preview right now. It's got many kind of moving parts, some of which are GA, some of which are still preview. But that's going to be a nice one to get in there. So let me tick that one on. We'll have Blob. We'll integrate with Azure Key Vault, and we'll rotate the keys every 5 minutes. And we can, again, every kind of point when you say I'll have something, we're kind of giving you a little kind of information, like secret rotation being enabled by default. You might want to use something like Reloader to actually restart your pods when the secrets change, because you might not get that when you're just like switching everything on or just deploying infrastructure as code. There's lots of kind of nuance and things to go chasing. So what else we got CADA, we've got Open Service Mesh, we got GitOps. I'm not the biggest. I'm not going to turn that one on. I'm not that into GitOps right now personally, but I know a lot of people are. So obviously the whole fleet management piece that was announced quite recently. I think at Ignite, fleet management using Flux. That whole piece is there. It's kind of quite exciting. Let me get rid of that. And then Dapper as well. So we can just start ticking all these boxes, and all of a sudden, our cluster is drowning in all these system pods and things we've given it to work on.
Is it thinking about capacity planning? Because the more bells and whistles you add to your cluster, the more compute resources are being consumed by everything that's running, and you didn't even deploy an app yet, right?
This is all part of the journey of, I think, the people go and when they start deploying workloads. So let me give you I'm going to go on a slight tangent. I do love my tangents. So I've got another repo here, which is actually all around running Minecraft on Kubernetes. But you can see from the screen grab straight away, these are all the system services that are running. But I haven't even chosen to install monitoring and a bunch of stuff on there. I'm trying to get the slimmest install that I can, but you can see straight away we've got all these different services. It's not like massive usage, but the more things I put on there, the more I need to be worrying about it. And if you pay attention to the AKS release notes, over time, the system pieces need more memory, need more CPU, or we've seen that sometimes we need to run more replicas. So running more replicas, more resource, it's over time, these things just add up as well. So ticking every single box, enabling every single add-on, it's great, but you kind of have to pay the price for the compute as well.
Yeah, and there's another thing that we're working on currently. I cannot say who and stuff, NDA and all, but open source components, right? Which components are you using? Where are they coming from? How are you maintaining them, etc. Right? Highly regulated environment. You already touched upon it. And so they do have some preferences around open source tooling. So is there like a shopping list or something that you can use as a reference if you go bananas? To say, if you enable stuff, do you get like a, I don't know, handout is not the right word, but can you get more information without going through all the different pieces? Like, oh, what's running here? What's being used under the hood, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm sure there's tools out there that help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not again, that's quite a big problem you've described, and that's not one we're necessarily trying to solve right now. If I go back up, and
I have a feeling we're missing something of the screen. Yeah, I don't see your bar.
You might have a second screen, right?
I've got two screens, but I can see my mouse on the.
Yeah, absolutely. But it stops at it breaks off at AKS construction helper at the top.
Okay, yeah. There's a little address bar thing.
Yeah, but we don't see it. It's not that bad. Wow. But
okay, well, I'll try and not play with my toolbar too much.
Let's see. I can mess around with it, but we risk of.
I think we're good. We'll just keep all the content in the middle.
Okay.
So there's a kind of this drop down approach preset thing we play with a little bit. We're going to be having some more work going into here over the next few weeks. So the one that's been in for some time is like the enterprise scale, is the Azure landing zone one. So this completely reskins those big presets we had at the beginning. So if I go back to like the principle driven, this is kind of like the, I like open source, I don't like open source, et cetera, et cetera. And when we were working with the landing zone team around this to try and like dovetail this as best we can, we thought the best way to do that is by speaking in the same language. So the presets being very focused on those same setups. So we've got a nice warning about making sure you've deployed into the reference implementation, that big diagram we started the session with. And then you specifically choose, I want a sandbox, I want something that's connected to Corp, I want something that's internet facing. And then you've got this big shopping list of presets that hang off the back of this as well. So like if I sit on the Corp one for a little bit, big warning we've got here is requires an existing subnet, because customers that have been through like landing zones, they'll already have like hub and spoke. They'll have a way of like vending subscriptions and connecting VNets. We're not trying to solve the same problem twice. What we want to do is dovetail really nicely into saying, okay, we're going to go straight into your kind of managed subscription that's sitting in your management group, but you have to provide a subnet. And typically in these kind of environments, this is how things would work anyway. Customers that use vWAN hub, the subnet would already be there, or big enterprises have got a networking team. They would want to be creating the virtual networks anyway. So the whole thing kind of tailors that a little bit nicely. And we are expanding this. So we've got one of the guys working on a set of preset scenarios that are the exact same implementations that you would see on the 4 different AKS baseline implementations. We spoke about the main one earlier. It uses traffic. It's got a certain certificate config. The regulated one uses a different ingress controller. We're going to replicate those same configurations here. So once you've been through that learning experience, you can go, hey, let's make this thing my own, but I want to start from exactly that thing that I just built. I followed these 12 steps. I've got my cluster, got my app, got my certs, but half of this config isn't suiting me, but I want to be able to customize it a little bit easier. So we're going to have the baseline in there as one of those presets, and we'll have those regulated boxes and kind of key boxes in there to begin with as well. And the other one that is kind of fun, I did kind of give you guys a preview of it earlier with the whole Minecraft piece, is we're going to be adding gaming scenarios in here. So actually, let me go to the pull request. So the first game, so the first gaming scenario is going to be Minecraft, because it's super easy. It's like it's already popular in a container, and let's put it in Kubernetes. And I run a Kubernetes cluster for my kids' Minecraft world, and there's no more demanding customer than a 9-year-old. When you tell him his 2-hour grind down the mines for diamonds has been lost, it's not being backed up. So it's setting things off in a really kind of real place for all those dads out there that want to be running this stuff and kind of like getting to grips with AKS at the same time. But on a more serious note, there's a bunch of game studios that Microsoft own and kind of work with, where they're using Kubernetes as well. So I'm working with one of the guys who's been involved with some of the studios to build Kubernetes environments. So we're going to bring that into here as well. So those same environment setups he's been building for like these game engines, we're going to have in here. So these are going to be more sample workload, like much more specific, like the big VM, the having the public IP on the nodes, having like all the setup that you'll need tailored to that workload. So I think we're about halfway done with this thing at the moment. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, maybe next week, we'll kind of get this out there. That's certainly another way of making what is basically like infrastructure, making a little bit more entertaining.
Wow. It's already like, okay, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to see what like the recommendations are for the different scenarios and pick a couple of things out there, and then discuss them as in, hey, this is suited for a gaming. Not that we're working on a game, but just to see what the differences are between the different scenarios. Yeah. So if I have like a gaming workload, how would that differ from an online facing app versus something that still needs hybrid connectivity, right? All these different scenarios.
Yeah, and you'll be able to see that. And just remember, it's the same set of bicep templates that's deploying all of this, because it's still AKS. It's just a slightly different config. So the one that Kevin, you've let me down here. I told you to remind me about the whole prod non-prod, but I've got to remember myself.
Sorry, Gordon. Sorry.
There you go. I mean, I'll forgive it this one time, but so this is an area that we've had a few of the guys actually like put a bunch of again signals from different areas about putting some more time into. So hopefully something like what's on the screen grab is going to be coming. So we're going to be very focused on these prod, non-prod environments. And we kind of talked about well-architected earlier. We're going to, as soon as you hit that production box, you're going to be hitting every single one of the well-architected recommendations for each of the services you've got. You've chosen the Azure Container Registry. You've got every single one of them. You've got Kubernetes, you've got all of them. You've got Firewall, it'll just cascade through. I think we deploy must be about 20 different services into your Azure environment when you go through construction with all the different options. So you enable this, you're going to get well architected all over it. But at the opposite end of the spectrum, we kind of want to provide the best cost optimized experience as well. So that can be simple things like, I want scale down, I want less nodes, I don't want to pay for an SLA. But one of the things that's going in there is automation accounts to actually physically stop all the nodes at a specific time and then start them back up again the same day. So all that same stuff we were doing on virtual machines, like 5-6 years ago, things that everyone was forgetting to do, and you put the PowerShell in to do it, bringing that, like remembering to do that for Kubernetes as well. You got a dev environment, let's just stop the whole thing at 6 p.m.,
No, that's our customers are going to absolutely love that, right? Because it's difficult to try and shut down a Kubernetes cluster down right at the moment without having to go in with manual steps, right? It's still, even though it's compute, it's sort of a PaaS service as well, right? Unless you bring that node count all the way back down, right? So, or that the cluster count all the way down. So, having these options also means that it's great from an adoption point of view as well, right? Like, I'm starting a POC or I'm starting a dev version of what my production app will look like, right? So it's introducing those environments and scenarios for folks no matter where they are on their journey. But I like the fact, like, yeah, if you click production, then you're going to be hitting all the pillars.
Yeah,
straight away,
straight out of the box. Like, please go read the 300 pages about well architected. But know that if you go through this step, we're going to be using. Are you guys familiar with PS Rule for Azure? It's like a PowerShell framework.
Jack Tracy's a bit of a fan of that, right? From what I've heard. So yeah,
it's a really nice framework. We use it in the actual CI/CD in the project, but it's making sure that config is out there. So if I try and find, that's the other thing. I was talking about CI/CD earlier. So when you've got a project and you're cutting releases and you've got your customers using it, you've got people using this stuff, you kind of need to be sure this works. Like, I don't want to be like just walking away from this like for like a week when 2 weeks in the summer and this whole thing's broken and the team isn't there. It's like we've had 14,000 workflow runs. It's like, that seems nuts. Because this is just an infrastructure project. You know, we're not deploying apps. We're not ASOS. We're not doing these kind of big things, but we've got a lot of stuff going on in here. So if I go into one of the infra CI pieces, so we have things that triggers part of CI. If you want to get things through, then it needs to build. If I can find one of them, failed one there. Let's jump on the failed one. That might be interesting. We also run them scheduled as well. So actually, this trying to zoom in is an absolute nightmare here. I'm going to go back to the main part of the repo where I've got a nice picture. So we run 3 of the key scenarios through weekly checks as well. So as well as checking that everything gets to main, it's being tested, we're doing all this stuff. Every single week, we're hydrating a full environment based from 3 different configs. That's just brought me back to the same place. I'm going to have to scroll back. No, I'm abandoning. I'm just going to show you this picture here. So we got this nice, pretty picture. We kind of go through this process of like the normal. Let's do this validation on this. Let's make sure this thing should deploy. Let's actually deploy it. And then let's check a bunch of stuff. Let's smoke test this thing with like well-known apps, starting quite simple. Like, I think this is the Azure voting app. Those of you that are familiar with that, yeah. And then we're putting on ones that use Cert Manager, external DNS. The app itself has got SSL, which are pulling certificates from Key Vault. We're doing end-to-end TLS and the whole thing, and we're inspecting that everything works. Like, we're not just going, well, this bicep seems to compile, let's put it in the repo. We're doing like pretty serious testing, like smoke testing on this whole thing. And at the very end, we just throw all the infrastructure away, put it in the bin, because we know that it works and we can stand behind this. And this is what I speak to customers about. I was chatting to one team today, and they were doing almost all of this straight off the bat. Lots of people aren't quite there. They're still trying to like remedy some of that technical debt, get some of these practices into there.
Wow, I'm really impressed. You know, Gordon, could you share the links of all these different pages, repos, and stuff that we went through? Then I can go through them, but I can also add them to the description of the video, because this is quite some work, and I see your name popping up everywhere all the time. So this is something you're actively working on, right?
I mean, I get a bunch of time that I can spend on it because it overlaps with my day job. You know, I spent like 15 years like in engineering, cutting production code. I love creating things. And I love solving problems. So if I can solve a problem for a customer, I kind of want to make something of that. I want to make something better and kind of be able to share that. So this is one of the itches that I can scratch with this project. So, I mean, if I look at the release that went out a couple of weeks ago or last week, you know, we had 5 people contribute to that. So I was just one guy of that 5. And this is the thing that I love about this project. I love about open source as well. It's not just coming up with an idea or coming up with like some code that you can share. And I'm sure you guys can probably sympathize with this as well. It's like when you start building a community, you actually get people actively contributing. That's when it becomes magical. You know, it's like it's not like the biggest number of contributors, but we've had like 28 contributors. Obviously, some of them are like Microsoft bot, another bot, but you know, most of them are real people. And that's what I really like about it. And the fact that in the last release we had 5 people put into it, that's hopefully where this is going. We're having a living, breathing implementation that just keeps on getting better.
Right. No, I jumped back into this a few weeks ago, and this is going to lead on to my question in a minute, Gordon. But yeah, as we see, right, you know, having those community contributions also brings in that outside influence as well. It's what's happening out on the ground. But like you mentioned, right, you're taking signals from customers and signals from the product team, etc., right, and a meeting in the middle to sort of offer those real life scenarios. But I know we're just about to run out of time, but I was wondering why the bicep name had been dropped a little bit, right, from the title.
Yeah.
But if we go to the outputs, I saw that Terraform code was also being generated, right, out the box of this. So where was it? Yeah. I saw that. And I was like, here. Whoa. Yeah, it's like, that, again, I always get asked this question, but Microsoft's commitment is, you know, we want to be able to use all infrastructure as a code languages, right? It fits best for the customer at the end of the day. But we've got the Terraform code in here as well as an output.
Yeah, I will hold my hands up, and this is an abstraction for Terraform. So the thing is, we can't maintain 2 code bases. Is
right.
really the crux of it. We did explore it with some of the other teams of Microsoft about doing it. But the other thing is Terraform doesn't love preview features. And AKS, those guys are going a million miles an hour. They love preview features. So you get to this point of going, well, we could do Terraform, but when we want to do this preview stuff, we have to use like the AZ API stuff, or we have to shim out to an ARM template, or you kind of, you know, if you're doing G everything, you'll be in probably a good place. But what we do here is we wrap the whole thing up in Terraform. So we've got a URL that points to the ARM template, but we build all this other Terraform code dynamically. So all these parameters that you set that deviate from the defaults, here you go. And then we give you the parameters TF file. It's got all your values in it. You can just scoop this up and just run with it. You've got Terraform. I was very quick holding my hands up, though. It isn't native. It isn't native Terraform, because we are leaning on the Azure RM deployment. So we've got it in there, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to drop the bicep pieces, because we've got actions in there. We've got Terraform in there.
That's right.
Bicep kept us in a box where we were just wanting to kind of break out that box a little bit. I suppose that was one of the things I dropped off my intro piece as well. So I've recently joined the Bicep maintainers team as well. So if you're keeping up on the community calls on Bicep, you'll see my little face at the bottom of one of the slides to begin with. So I'm a really big fan of Bicep. I do have my Terraform exam booked just before Christmas, so
that's good.
I'm not trying to pretend it doesn't exist. You know, we've got Terraform in here. I'm doing my exam, but you know, Bicep is a fantastic project as well. And I know you've got Alex on the call in a few weeks as well.
That's right. Yeah, we've had the PM in as well, right? For the Azure Terraform team, but we've got Alex coming on. Again, it's folks use different tools, right, to construct their Azure environments, right? It's the best tool for the job. And what I'm always trying to advocate is, Microsoft is invested, right, in the different tools that are out there. But yeah, like you said, with AKS and Kubernetes in nature, right, having that cloud native approach, Bicep has the edge there, right? Because as soon as it's in preview, it's supported, right, kind of thing, or the you're able to start deploying those resources from like day zero, kind of thing, day one. So yeah.
And there's so many add-ons, and we kind of went through the tab earlier. There's loads of add-ons, and the way you do that in Terraform isn't always as nice as we want it to be. So you can definitely do it. It's Kubernetes is one of the more complex beasts to do Terraform with. Very, very doable. We got lots of reference samples of doing it. I'm still in the Bicep camp, but I would never try and flip someone from Terraform to Bicep.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're at the hour as well.
We are, we are. So
time flies.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks again, Gordon. Thanks for coming on. This has come on leaps and bounds from the last time I looked at it. There's even more stuff in there, right? And I only looked at it again a few months ago, right? So I think it's going to be a great tool, a great place for folks to go and read up, right? Again, if you want to contribute, we'd love to see your face, right, in the contributor circles, right, on the repo.
I want to see more people here. So if we ever do another one of these, I want to check back and get some more faces in there, because that's what it's about. It's about a community project. This isn't just like Microsoft dictating. This is for everyone, for partners, for customers, for everyone to kind of put into.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for coming on, Gordon. It's great work, very in depth. That's what we like. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content and videos around this. Gordon, are you on social media, or where can folks find you, right, if they wanted to follow what you were doing, right, the life and journey of Gordon Byers, right, from a technical point of view?
I don't really do much social media. I do GitHub. If you want to find me, come on GitHub. I've got a profile here.
Awesome.
You can always find places to message me from there.
Awesome. So yeah, you can find Gordon on GitHub as well. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, that's about it, Robin. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me. There we are. Hello, everyone. We were in the top right corner, but yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I want to thank Gordon for coming on as well, because this was amazing. I didn't even know it existed, so I'm definitely going through it. Yeah, mind-blowing, to be honest. So with that, don't forget to join the community. It's growing. You don't want to miss out. We're engaging lots of amazing people in there. And yeah, with that, we have to let Gordon go because he needs to run as well. So thanks.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And remember, don't be a stranger. Bye.
Bye-bye.